our motivation for why we do this. We believe that cybersecurity is a duty for all businesses. We're really, really skeptical of foreign actors. So we think everybody needs to protect their trading partners, their employees, our information, and the continuity of our businesses. So what are we going to do today? I'm going to talk about CIS for like a minute, and then we'll have a short presentation. Kind of the theme of this is the tail wagging the dog. That's a syndrome that we're going to talk about. Then we'll give you some questions that you can ask of your organization to kind of get things on track, and then some resources. We'll talk about a couple of other things at the end. And at the end, you can ask questions, or you can ask questions during the presentation. So we have a cybersecurity culture at CIS. We're certified actually as a cyber safe IT organization. We take it very, very seriously, and we've been proven to take it seriously. So that's good. We're really proud of this, actually. Okay, here's the syndrome I want to talk about, and we call it the tail wagging the dog. So, that sounds kind of funny, but CEOs actively lead how their companies manage their operational departments. Goals are clearly defined, processes are continually improved, workflows are documented, all of the good stuff like that. Financial, of course, everybody pays attention to that. Operations, you couldn't make money if you weren't efficient. Business development, that keeps your business alive. Everybody has their goals for new business. Very clearly laid out. Marketing, the same thing. Human resources usually works like a machine. The only department that we see that doesn't really do all of these things is information technology. And why is that? The main problem is communication. So, I interview a lot of IT departments and management, try to get them in sync. And every time, doesn't matter what company it is, the number one complaint from business leaders about IT is communication. The other side of it, I ask, okay, what's your big frustration, UIT department? And they say it's because the business people don't read their emails. So we've got a gap here, right? I mean, everybody's gotten a long, twisty email from the IT department, and nobody really reads them. So we've got a gap here. So I call it the language gap, and because IT often talks in technical jargon, and most business people don't want to hear that. They don't want to hear acronyms. They don't know what they mean. So it's difficult to communicate, and that's evidenced by all the companies that I interview. So business leaders will avoid technical conversations, and they should, right? It puts them at a disadvantage when they have IT people talking in terms that they don't know. So, and also there's a general lack of knowledge about effective management of IT operations. It's like, I have an MBA, and I remember that we studied, how to accounting and marketing and business development in great detail, but nothing really about IT, And so also, you have metrics, especially in sales, but there are no metrics that evaluate the effectiveness of the IT department. So how does leadership sort of take back? Sorry, I had a distraction there. How do we take it back? How does leadership, how does the CEO take control? So we believe that the acceptable level of business risk should come down from the tops, because we're talking about cybersecurity when we're talking about IT. But in a lot of cases, and this is the tail wagging the dog, all of those decisions are being made by the IT people. The conversation about cybersecurity should not devolve into a technical conversation. It should be more about business, risk, the goals of the business. And I use this example. It's like, if you have a budget meeting with the CFO and his people, you don't talk about debits and credits. They'd never be discussed in an annual budget meeting. So this discussion there would be on the strategic direction of the company. And the same thing should be true for IT. IT security should have a high level strategic business goals directed from the top. Therefore, we have questions for the C-suite that you can ask very simply to try to get back on track and to get ownership of all of the IT operations. So here's the term that we use, trust but verify. We think that executive leaders need to trust but verify when it comes to managing cybersecurity and the whole IT department. So, they need to evaluate the current situation, define business objectives, and require a plan of action. And I'll get to that in more detail here in a minute. So here's the term that we use, trust but verify. We think that executive leaders need. So first are the questions that you ask. And we have 3 questions. I added some sub-questions underneath just for context and detail, but those may be different depending on your organization. So the first question you need to ask the IT people is, if we're attacked, how long would we be down? So you think, well, that's a simple question, but it's not often asked, to be honest. And if you get the answer to this and it's satisfactory and aligned with your business goal, you've come a long way, because this breaks down into a whole lot of other questions. And of course, you got to identify the different systems that you have. Email may be critical, absolutely critical, but maybe the files can wait, if you're down. Also, executives should ask, what's involved with me? What do I need if we're breached? What do I need to do? Who do I need to call? What are the steps that we need to take? The second important question to ask is, are our systems and software up to date and equipped to protect us? Instead of asking, hey, have we been patched, or do we have security updates, or any of those kind of questions, just say, are we up to date? Are there better products today than we bought 3 or 4 years ago? The answer to that's probably yes. Are applications updated for bugs and vulnerabilities? That's a business question, right? And do we have any network equipment, gear that's no longer under warranty? Very simple questions. Those are sub-questions to, are we up to date? So do we have a documented plan of action in case something happens? You'd be surprised at how many companies don't. And is it documented? Is it immediately available? Do we need outside resources? One outside resource you may need is a lawyer, for example. You may need IT resources, special skills. And certainly you might need your cybersecurity insurance people to be involved. So you need a plan that says, how do we do this? And what do we do? What are the roles and responsibilities of all the different people? For example, who notifies your clients? When? There's so many questions to ask, but the main question is, do we have a documented plan? All right, so now we have the questions. So the next thing is the objectives. So as a business leader, you've got to define the objectives. We think there are 3 most important objectives. First, you define the acceptable downtime in case of a cyber breach, period. It's like the IT people shouldn't be able to tell you, well, we'll be down for 4 hours or we'll be down for 2 days. It's like you need to set the standard for that. And you have to think about the different systems. Like I said, maybe email can be down for a couple hours, but your CRM can't, your Salesforce can't. You can identify manual workarounds. If everybody's, stuck and the systems aren't running, can we use paper files? Can we do things in a different way? And so the other thing is that IT can't do is understand the financial implications of downtime. You know that as a CEO, as a CFO, but the IT people, it's not like they're thinking in those terms. Second important objective is the prioritize the criticality of your business information. So you know this better than your IT people. So, be sure that the order of the system's recoveries is prioritized. Like you wouldn't want, your least needed system to come up first. You need to define, hey, we have got to have our production system. That's number one. Get that up even before email. Okay, identify what information needs the highest level of protection. Here again, where's your personal information? Where's the information that you keep that's most important to your business? What is that? You need to define that and be sure it's in the loop when you make these decisions. Is any critical data temporarily exposed during the recovery process? This is kind of important because a lot of times if IT runs a backup, is that information as it's being restored available to people that it shouldn't be inside your organization, especially personal information or client information. Third most important objective is to define acceptable liability to your employees, your vendors, and your customers. It's like, this is so important. You've got to think through it and understand, what's okay, and most of it isn't. How do you reestablish a relationship with a customer when you've had a lack of service? What do you need from your vendors? So, because, we talk about this a lot in the other webinars we've done, that your entire supply chain is at risk if you're breached. You need to understand what impact that has on your employees and your vendors, customers. So any private information vulnerable to be stolen. And a lot of people kind of overlook this, and now I think there's going to be 18 states that will actually come in and fine big numbers if, data about people and customers is released. And so again, I said, have a clear plan for communicating the breach. Who needs to know? When do they need to know it? That's really, really important. So those are the 3 business objectives.
To your point, a lot of this information is not, I don't want to say not typically on IT's radar, but this is more on the business side and business implications, and it's for the CEO or the C-suite really to set those parameters around what's acceptable and what's not, and dictate that information for the IT side of the house to figure out, okay, here's how we're gonna get that done.
Yeah, and you're right about that, because CEOs and CFOs are notorious for keeping their really critical data on their individual machines where the IT or anybody else can't see it. So it's really important to understand, where's the important information and how do we protect it? So here's the kicker. We've talked about the questions. We've talked about the objectives. So now, here are the 3 next steps that if you take these steps, you're on the right path. First of all is a vulnerability assessment, where you identify gaps and come up with an improvement plan. A lot of times this should be conducted by an independent, unbiased third party. You do that in accounting, you have an outside auditor. Once a year, you have somebody come in, and not to make sure that, there's a problem or somebody stealing something. You just want to know that people aren't making mistakes. Were things identified? Were things categorized the way that they should be? Same for IT. So ask yourself, do you have the time, expertise, and resources to do this? We find that most IT departments are extremely busy. And what's important tends to be what's urgent. But what's important to business continuation is kind of long term. It's really important, but it's never on the front burner. There's so many front burner things that come up that a lot of times the IT people don't have time for the long range implementations. And, you know, the second step you need to take is the security incident plan. We just talked about that. It's like you need to document your policies and procedures in the case of an event. So, you know, are there industry guidelines and procedures that you can follow? You know, if you're a government contractor or in a financial industry, you know, there are industry standards that you need to follow. There are compliance issues. So there are a lot of people out there who are telling you what you need to have planned and what to do in an incident. What people besides the IT department need to have roles in the plan? We talked about this a little bit, but you know, if you have somebody that's responsible in marketing for letting people know, putting out emails to clients, to vendors, all of those kinds of things, you need to have that in the plan. And is the plan updated and tested? A lot of times people will pull out a plan. Yeah, we've got that. It's documented, and it's a, you know, it's a static document. You know, it hasn't been changed. And so, you know, it needs to be regularly updated and even tested. Third next step is to have a roadmap for improvement. And we'll talk about this later in the presentation. You need to develop milestones and quarterly goals, just like you would in managing anything else in your business. You need to have realistic timelines for implementation of the recommendations. Things take longer than they normally, you know, than you want, especially when it comes to IT. You need to have a regular cadence of meetings for accountability and roadblocks. So once you're going through the process of improvement, that involves your entire company. Let's say you have to have a better password policy, that there are people who don't have to change their passwords. You find out that in the assessment. So, you know, just getting people to adhere to a new password policy, you know, that's a lot of work. You know, people are very resistant to new procedures when it comes to security. And then you need to dovetail the plan with the budget. Obviously, you know, you got to be able to pay for it. You got to understand where the cash is coming from and when you have to pay for certain things. So there you go. Vulnerability assessment, security incident plan, and a roadmap for improvement. That'll put you on the right track. So now I'm going to talk about some resources and food for thought to help you understand your options and what you can possibly do to sort of streamline this process. You know, and I think if you know these things, then when you start asking the questions, you'll have a little more background and understanding. This is a syndrome. If you notice, we're into syndromes. The Picasso Man. And you wonder, well, what's this got to do with anything? So traditionally, we use the Picasso Man to illustrate to business executives that if they have a small IT department, most of those people have to be, you know, many different hats. They have to be part CIO, part IT director, admin, engineer, help desk, analyst. And that was all true. But now we've thrown cybersecurity and compliance on top of the heap. So we use this to illustrate, you know, where are you going to get the resources to do all these things? Do your people have the capability, the expertise? I think that's a good question to ask yourself ahead of time. So we talked a lot, or at least in the beginning, I said, you know, executives don't know how to manage IT. You know, this is not part of their thing. So, you know, what's funny about that is what we call the IT management maturity model. And believe it or not, this is like standard across the industry. There are people like Gartner, ITIL, CMMC, all these organizations, they agree. It's really amazing, you know, that there are 5 levels of IT management maturity. Now, we did a whole webinar on this, so I'm not going to dig into it too deeply, but the point to know is that the more mature your management style is with your IT, your risk level of a cyber attack goes down. And you can imagine that cyber really is all about really tight procedures for security that are followed religiously. So it can't be reactive. It has to be proactive. So right here in the middle is at least where you need to be. If your IT department is just responding to individual user challenges and requests, and that's all they're doing, you're behind it. You'll never get to cybersecurity because they're being reactive. Now they can get more efficient, and a lot of companies can get here where they have a systematic approach to solving known issues. And they might patch sometimes. They might, be systematic about how they solve problems, but that's not enough. So they need to get to at least proactive. And we like for companies to get to where they're strategic. That's what this is all about, where you achieve IT operational excellence and taking a strategic role in driving business innovation. So that's why the CEO has to be involved. If the CEO, C-suite, CFO, they can get the management of the IT and cybersecurity under control to where it's extremely strategic, that's when you win. So here's how we do it. So, I hope I've illustrated that it's not that hard to ask the right questions, have the right objectives, and have a plan going forward. So here's how we do it. So if we come across a customer that is, a disaster or medium in terms of their management, we do a quarter. It takes us a quarter, and we have a lot of resources. So if you don't have outside resources, this timelines can be a lot longer. But I won't go through this because, as I said, we had a whole webinar on this topic. But in month one, you worry about documentation. We come into a lot of companies and they don't even know what they have. You set up monitoring, you set up ticketing workflow, you do your backups. In the next 30 days, you verify your disaster recovery risk and you even test it. You manage your endpoints and you connect to a 24/7 managed security operations center. It's just like in your house, you have an alarm system, but it doesn't do you any good unless it reports to, an operations center. And then you set up a security foundation management in which, you understand what your incidents might be, what your alerts might be, and how to deal with them. And then, of course, everybody needs to have a security awareness campaign. I think that's, required for cyber insurance now. Go back and do the vulnerability assessment again to see how you've improved, continually improve, and then have a strategic roadmap for moving forward. And I've talked about zero trust till I'm blue, but that just means that you got to be sure that the people inside your company only get the information that they absolutely need. So I won't dwell on this, but you can do this in 90 days.
I just
Yeah.
I just wanted to say, Brian, that it's really helpful, I think, to see that timeline and to kind of manage those expectations of, that maturity level is possible, but it's not like you come in today and tomorrow you're going from being proactive to strategic. You got to take all these different things into account, as well as shifting the company culture, which, that in and of itself is, no easy feat.
I know we should do a webinar on culture shift, when it comes to cybersecurity. That's a really good idea. So this is one of Peter's favorites, is what it means to have co-managed IT. And that's where you have a technology partnership in which you have an integrated approach. And especially if, you're too big for one IT guy, two IT guys, three IT guys, this is a really, really popular model. I mean, this is trending. This is how companies are managing their IT, because with an outside partner, they will bring in the management controls. They'll bring in the ticketing process. They'll bring in the cyber alert and remediation, where your people, IT people, can focus on your business needs, your sales force, your website, all the things that are critical to your business, and then let an outside company handle, keeping the lights on and doors locked. So the way that works is with your team, employee training, that's really important, and it's one of the places that a lot of companies fall down. But your IT people need to be providing training, whether it's through, online training or however, to keep your employees efficient and understanding how to use the technology tools that they have. Initial troubleshooting, business application support, that's really important. Your key business systems should be very well understood by your IT team. They need to do the policies and procedures. That's an internal thing. All companies are different. Data management, we talked about that. Who sees what? Data privacy, and of course, all your online media, your website and your Twitter and LinkedIn and all those kinds of things. Outsourced are the things that are pretty common to most all businesses, right? So, VCIO, security people. We talked about the IT maturity management model. You can actually get that from a company and implement it, in, like I said, 30, 60, 90 days. Manage your cybersecurity, your patch management. They do all the little day-to-day nitpicky, boring kinds of mundane things so that your people can focus on, the immediate issues that you have with your business. So there, I just wanted to point out kind of the Picasso syndrome, what it means today in IT, because, it used to be the good IT guy handled everything and could handle everything, but now it's just so complex in IT. No one knows all the different things, the networking, the software, the product knowledge, the security. It's impossible for one or two people to understand everything. So I hope you appreciate that we're pointing out that the way that companies are going these days is through co-managed IT. We think it's vital that executive level members know and understand the right questions to ask, and that'll help that. Aligning IT and cybersecurity through meaningful discussions can be easier than you think. It seems like it's this daunting task for executives. Oh, I got to talk all this IT jargon. How do I do that? I don't even know where to start. Well, we give you a document that shows you how you can get started. Co-managed IT services, we got to point that out because, that can provide increased security, expertise, and affordability. A lot of companies are, the hiring and maintaining IT people can be difficult because they tend to change jobs a lot. And they're always working their way up the pay scale. And a lot of times the only way they can do that is go from company to company. So instead of hiring an additional general IT person, co-managed relationships are about price. So it makes a whole lot of so much more capability and resources at your fingertips by doing a co-managed IT program. And as I said, we call that COMIT. The other thing that I'd like to make, and we make this point a lot, but a proactive and mature IT management model is critical for cybersecurity. You can't be lax. It's like you can't be reactive. You've got to have very regular things that you do on a very regular basis. Otherwise, the whole system falls apart and you have holes. So again, if you can't do that internally, there are a lot of ways you can do that through a co-managed IT service provider. All right, so where do we go, or what do we get to? So the key takeaways here, I think I would like to emphasize is that business objectives should come from the executive suite, and that includes IT. And you have a simple 3-3-3 process for doing that we illustrated.